9-year-old Sophie used to think her family was perfect. Her mom and dad used to laugh together, take her on weekend picnics, and cheer the loudest at her soccer games. But one day, the arguing started, first in whispers, then in loud voices that echoed through their small house. And then one evening, Sophie overheard the words she didn't understand but knew were bad. "We're getting a divorce." Her dad packed a suitcase and moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. Sophie's mom tried to make everything feel normal, making her favorite meals and keeping her busy with activities. But nothing felt the same. Sophie felt like the glue holding her family together had dried up and cracked apart. Every other weekend, Sophie would visit her dad. His apartment was small, with no backyard for her to play in. He tried to make her laugh with silly jokes and let her pick what to watch on TV. But Sophie couldn't help but feel like she didn't belong there. At her mom's house, it was quiet and tense. Sophie didn't know where she fit anymore. One night, Sophie sat on her bed and stared at her stuffed bunny, Mr. Wiggles. "If they loved me, why couldn't they stay together?" she whispered. Mr. Wiggles didn't answer, and Sophie cried herself to sleep. Sophie began to notice the small things that felt missing. Her dad wasn't there to braid her hair in the mornings. Her mom wasn't there to sing her silly songs at bedtime when she was at her dad's place. At school, Sophie didn't want to talk about her family because everyone else seemed to have parents who were still together. One day, Sophie asked her mom, "Do you still love Dad?" Her mom's face softened, but her eyes filled with tears. "I'll always care about your dad, Sophie, but sometimes grown-ups realize they're better apart than together. That doesn't mean we don't love you, okay?" Sophie nodded, but she didn't feel okay. On her dad's weekend, he took Sophie to the pub. She ran to the swings, and he pushed her higher and higher. "Do you still love Mom?" she asked suddenly. Her dad stopped pushing for a moment, then knelt beside her. "Your mom and I, we always love you more than anything. Even if we're apart, we both want the best for you. That's why we'll always work together to make sure you're happy." Sophie thought about this on the drive back. Her parents still seemed so far apart, but something about her dad's words felt true. A week later, Sophie had a big soccer game. She was nervous because the coach had put her in as goalie for the first time. When she looked at the sideline, she saw her mom waving and cheering, but then she spotted her dad too, standing a little farther away. They weren't sitting together, but both were there for her. When Sophie blocked the final shot and her team won, her parents both ran onto the field. Her dad high-fived her, and her mom hugged her tightly. For the first time in a long time, Sophie smiled a big, real smile. That night, Sophie lay in bed with Mr. Wiggles. "They don't have to be together to love me," she whispered to her bunny. She thought about her dad's goofy jokes and her mom's bedtime songs. Even though things weren't the way they used to be, they still showed her love in their own way. Sophie didn't feel as lost anymore. Instead, she started to believe that love wasn't about being in the same house. It was about being there when it mattered. And Sophie knew no matter what, that her parents would always be there for her.